There are 5 psychological laws that most people learn only after life hurts them. The first will explain why people suddenly lose interest in you. The second will explain why rejection can make you obsessed. The third will reveal why you're wasting your life without realizing it. And the fifth? It explains why some people become almost impossible to emotionally destroy. Stay until the end. Because once you understand these laws, you may start seeing your entire life differently. Here's something most people discover too late. Stop chasing someone and watch what happens. Not because playing games is powerful. Not because ignoring people makes you mysterious. But because removing your effort reveals something you couldn't see while you were constantly pushing. Who reaches out? Who notices your absence? Who only talks to you when they need something? Who actually values the relationship? And who was only responding because you kept forcing the connection? This is where people make a painful mistake. They think, if I try harder, they'll care more. So they send another message. They explain themselves again. They apologize when they did nothing wrong. They become more available, more agreeable, more forgiving, until eventually, they aren't building a relationship anymore. They're auditioning for one. And here's the uncomfortable part. The moment you constantly chase someone's attention, you teach yourself that their attention is more valuable than yours. That's why the Stoics emphasized independence. Not isolation. Independence. You can love someone without needing their constant attention. You can value someone without begging them to value you. You can want someone without making them responsible for your happiness. And here's where this gets interesting, because sometimes people don't realize your value until you stop over-explaining it. But there's an even bigger reason this works. When you stop chasing, you finally get to see reality without your desperation covering it. And what reality reveals next can hurt. Because sometimes, they weren't confused. They simply weren't choosing you. And that's where Law 2 begins. Let's say someone rejects you. What happens next? Most people don't simply experience the rejection. They interrogate themselves. What did I do wrong? Was I not attractive enough? Was I not successful enough? Why did they choose someone else? And eventually one simple event becomes a massive conclusion. Something is wrong with me. But what if that's completely false? Think about this. You can be an amazing person and still be the wrong person for someone. You can be intelligent and still lose an opportunity. You can be loyal and still be left. You can love someone deeply and still not be loved in the same way. That's one of life's hardest lessons. Being valuable does not guarantee being chosen. And being rejected does not prove you're worthless. Sometimes rejection is simply information. Tells you, this isn't yours. But your ego hears, you aren't enough. That's the difference. And if you don't understand that difference, you'll spend years trying to prove your value to people who already made their decision. Think about how absurd that is. Someone says, I don't want this relationship. And instead of accepting the information, you spend 6 months trying to convince them they're wrong. Why? Because you're not fighting for the relationship anymore. You're fighting your ego. You want them to choose you because their choice has become evidence of your worth. And that's dangerous, because now another person's decision determines your identity. The Stoics would tell you, you cannot control another person's judgment, but you can control whether you make their judgment your identity. And that leads to the third law, because even after someone rejects you, they can still control you, without speaking to you once. How? Through your attention. Imagine someone hasn't spoken to you in 3 months, yet somehow, they're still in your head every morning. You wake up thinking about them. You check their profile. You remember the conversation. You wonder what they're doing. You imagine what would happen if they came back. They're not physically present, but psychologically, they're still taking up space. And that's when you need to understand Law 3. You don't realize how expensive your attention is. Every minute you spend obsessing over something is a minute of your life you will never get back. Read that again. Your attention isn't free. You pay for it with your life. Yet people give it away constantly. They spend hours watching other people's lives. They monitor who viewed their story. They wonder why someone hasn't replied. They compare their progress to strangers. They replay arguments that ended years ago. They imagine conversations that will probably never happen. And then they say, "I don't know where the time went." You know where it went. Your attention followed everything except what mattered. Here's the psychological trap. Your brain naturally wants unfinished stories. That's why you replay unanswered questions. Why didn't they reply? Why did they change? Why did they leave? What are they thinking? Will they come back? And because there is no definite answer, your mind keeps returning to the problem. But you don't have to solve every mystery. Some questions don't deserve your life. Sometimes the strongest sentence you can say is, "I don't know, and I don't need to know." That's freedom. You don't need to understand why someone disrespected you before walking away. You don't need to understand why someone stopped loving you before accepting it. You don't need to understand why someone didn't choose you before choosing yourself. Because here's the truth. Closure is sometimes just acceptance without an explanation. And now comes the law that changes how you deal with almost everything. Because your attention is only part of the problem. The deeper problem is what you're afraid to lose. Here's one of the most uncomfortable psychological truths. The more you need something, the more power it has over you. Need approval? Criticism controls you. Need attention? Silence controls you. Need love? Rejection controls you. Need success? Failure controls you. Need everyone to like you? Their opinions control you. Think about it. If someone can ruin your entire day simply by ignoring you, they have more power over you than you realize. If one person's opinion can destroy your confidence, you've given them access to something they shouldn't own, your self-worth. And this is where Stoicism becomes incredibly practical. The goal isn't, "I don't care." The goal is, "I care, but I don't depend on the outcome." That's different. You can want the relationship without needing it. You can want the promotion without believing failure makes you worthless. You can want someone's respect without begging for it. You can love someone without needing them to stay forever. This is called detachment. And detachment isn't becoming cold. It's becoming free. Because when you no longer need something to happen, you can finally make better decisions. You stop tolerating disrespect. You stop chasing unavailable people. You stop accepting crumbs. You stop negotiating against yourself. You stop saying, "Maybe if I try harder," and start saying, "If it's not mutual, I won't force it." But there's one final problem. Even after you stop chasing, stop obsessing, and stop depending on other people, life can still hit you. Someone can betray you. You can lose money. A relationship can end. A dream can collapse. And when that happens, what separates the emotionally powerful person from everyone else? Law 5. Listen carefully. The strongest person isn't the person who never gets hurt. That's impossible. The strongest person is the one who can get hurt without allowing the pain to choose their next move. And this final law explains exactly how. Reality does not care what you think should have happened. That's harsh, but it's freeing. Someone left? That's reality. You failed? That's reality. They don't love you? That's reality. You made a mistake? That's reality. And you have two choices. You can spend your energy saying, "This shouldn't have happened." Or you can ask, "What do I do now?" That question is the difference between helplessness and power. Because the past doesn't need another argument. It needs a response. You cannot change yesterday, but you can decide what yesterday produces in you. You can let rejection make you bitter or selective. You can let failure make you ashamed or disciplined. You can let betrayal make you paranoid or wiser. You can let loneliness destroy you or introduce you to yourself. This is the Stoic mindset. Don't demand that reality become easier. Become stronger at meeting reality. And here's where everything connects. The person who controls you isn't necessarily the person who insults you. It's the person whose behavior determines your emotional state. The situation doesn't always control you. Your interpretation does. The event happens. then your mind says, "This means I'm worthless. This means I'll never find anyone. This means everyone will leave. This means I'm a failure." And suddenly one event becomes an identity. That's the real prison. Not what happened, what you decided it means. So change the question. Don't ask, "Why did this happen to me?" Ask, "What is this asking me to become?" That question turns pain into information, failure into training, rejection into redirection, and chaos into discipline. Now put the 5 laws together. You cannot control people, so stop trying to control their behavior. Rejection doesn't define you, so stop using other people's choices to measure your worth. Your attention is your life, so stop spending it on things that don't deserve it. Whatever you desperately need can control you, so build the ability to want without depending. And finally, accept reality, because once you accept what you cannot change, you can finally focus on what you can. And now you can see the hidden pattern. All 5 laws are teaching the same thing. Stop handing your inner world to the outside world. That's the real meaning behind emotional strength. Maybe someone doesn't understand you. Let them. Maybe someone doesn't choose you. Let them. Maybe someone leaves. Let them. Maybe someone thinks less of you. Let them. Not because you are weak, because you finally understand. Their behavior is their responsibility. Your response is yours, and that changes everything. You stop chasing explanations. You stop begging for closure. You stop trying to win arguments nobody remembers. You stop checking who noticed your absence. You stop performing for people who aren't watching. You stop trying to prove that you're worth choosing. And you start building a life that doesn't require constant validation. That's when peace begins. Not when everyone finally treats you correctly. When you stop needing everyone to. So let's return to the beginning. I asked you, what if the most dangerous thing controlling your life isn't another person, but your reaction to them? Now you know. The person who ignored you didn't necessarily take your peace. You gave their silence meaning. The person who rejected you didn't necessarily destroy your confidence. You allowed their decision to become your identity. The failure didn't necessarily ruin your future. You allowed one event to define the rest of your story. And that's the ultimate Stoic lesson. You cannot control everything that happens to you, but you can become so disciplined internally that what happens outside you no longer decides who you are. So remember these 5 laws. Control yourself, not people. Don't confuse rejection with worthlessness. Protect your attention. Need less. And accept reality faster than your ego. Because the moment you stop allowing the outside world to control your inner world, you become extremely difficult to break. And now, go back to the first question. What if the most dangerous thing controlling your life was never the person outside you? What if it was the reaction inside you?